I'm looking forward to today. I get to talk to Renee. I'm real excited she's here. We're going to be talking about guilt and shame, false guilt, not true guilt. But how do you deal with that? Especially a lot of women who are impacted by domestic abuse find themselves struggling with shame and guilt. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. And Renee, could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me this morning. Like Lauren said, my name is Renee Best. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor, as well as a licensed clinical addiction specialist associate. A lot of letters, a lot of words. I have a small private practice in Raleigh and an office as well in Waxhaw, which is outside of Charlotte. And I am all things trauma. I do a lot of trauma work. I'm certified in trauma focused cognitive behavioral therapy, which is for children. I'm also certified in EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. I'm trained in brain spotting, but hopefully I'll have my certification in brain spotting by next month. I'm excited about that. And I do some work with cognitive processing therapy. That was the first training I was able to complete when I first started this journey 5 years ago. And I used that when I was working in a domestic violence shelter and working there with the survivors of abuse and their children really is what helped me figure out that I want to do trauma. And I want to understand the root of everyone's what's going on with them, their behaviors, what they're going through. So that's pretty much about who I am. I love sports. I love
Yeah.
to eat, especially sweets, and I love to talk about all things trauma.
Oh, wow. Me too. We were a little bit late because I was picking her brain about trauma. I was like, "Oh, let's have a great conversation." I was like, "I need to go
Like,
now."
we
We
can talk
didn't do
about
it.
this all morning long, Lauren.
I love learning it, and yeah, you're a wealth of knowledge, and I'm so excited because I can tell everybody that we do have our retreat 2024 dates, and Renee Best is going to be a speaker there. And today's topic will be what she is talking on at the 2024 retreat. So you kind of get a sneak peek. We'll be releasing information about the retreat soon and signups and everything else. So yeah, go ahead and get excited. There's a 2024 retreat coming, and we are working on that now. So let's go ahead and get started with today's conversation on shame and guilt. And I am hopeful that those who are watching are encouraged and walk away from this just feeling a lot lighter because shame just and guilt feel so heavy. And so I'm looking forward to hopefully a lot of people being able to find encouragement today. So as you're listening, if you have any questions and you want to say hello, just feel free to drop them in the comments. We can see them. Love to hear from you. Let us know where you're watching from. Welcome, Renee. Let us know if you will be want to come to the 2024 retreat. That would be
Yes, come on and come hang out with us. We have a good time.
yes. All right, so let's get started. What role does shame and false guilt play in a survivor of domestic abuse's life as she tries to overcome its impacts?
Hmm. So it's huge because when you think about shame and you think about guilt, there's always the negative thoughts, right, that come along with that. And when I say negative thoughts or AKA negative beliefs, I'm talking about I should have known better. That's a big one.
Yeah.
I should have known better, or I am weak, or I should have done something different. It's kind of that I would have, should have, could have thing. And when you're carrying around those negative beliefs about yourself, that's what keeps you stuck in that feeling of that shame and that guilt. And it's so important that one, we recognize what are those thoughts or those negative beliefs we are carrying about ourselves? What are we saying about ourselves as a result of what we experience during this abusive relationship? And really processing each event attached to those beliefs. Because typically we something happens to us, and what's the first thing we want to do, right? We want to avoid. That's probably one of the biggest things many people do when they've experienced trauma. Let me not think about it, let me not talk about it, let me just move on and keep pushing. But our body and our brain, which is attached to our nervous system, it keeps track of all of that. So as much as you want to avoid, it's not going anywhere. At some point in time, it's going to show up. It's going to show up in the way you behave. It's going to show up whether you trust people going forward. It's going to show up in the way you navigate relationships and friendships. And so if you don't process the events that happen to actually identify who owns that shame and guilt, because it is not the survivor, it's actually the abuser, it's actually the person who committed the act. That's their shame, that's their guilt.
Mm.
So why do we carry it? Because of course we should have known better, right? I saw the red flags, I should have left.
Mm-hmm.
But the real fault was I loved someone and they didn't love me back the way I deserved. And I kept giving them chances time and time again, hoping and praying that they were going to change, but they didn't. And so that's why that shame and guilt is so strong in many of us, because we should have known better, right? And it's so important that you work hard to change that. Not just say, oh, nope, that's not true, but really go through every single time you have felt that event. That's why I like the EMDRs and the brain spotting, because it's literally picking at every event that's happened in your life. Because whether you know it or not, your brain is storing all of that all the way back to your childhood. And what your brain is saying, hey, when you feel this way, there's these other times that you have felt that same exact way. Let me go and hit you with all of those things. And that's when you start to spiral, or you get depressed, or you're anxious and you can't function, or you're stuck. And so it's important that you just realize all the things that come along with that and process those things. And by no means, this is not an easy process. It's a difficult process. It's a scary process. It's an uncomfortable process. But it is a process that is needed to work through those negative beliefs to change that.
Wow, that's really good. I'm like, wow, I can relate to so much of that myself. And it's so easy to beat ourselves up, because sometimes, I don't know, maybe I'm going off on a tangent here, but I feel like connected to trauma, when we're seeing the red flags and we know we should have run and we didn't, and we're loving this person we want to, a lot of times that's connected to trauma in and of itself. We're
Yeah,
trying to replay a time in our lives when we didn't receive love, and
yeah.
thinking that we can earn it and we can win it. And so
Mhm.
we put further shame and guilt on ourselves, and now we've got this root trauma, and it's hard to get into that.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit to that? And am I, if I'm going off too much, just let me know.
Oh no, it made me think of, that kind of like you're hoping that things are going to change. You're hoping that, you know, that you can do everything you can to change this situation. If you love them more, if you do more, and things of that nature. But what you bring up ties to kind of what I was sharing on why I love the work I'm doing with EMDR and brain spotting, is because it is taking you back to your past. It is taking you back to your childhood where you were missing something or didn't feel something. And you're saying to yourself, I'm going to make sure I never feel this way again. So I'm going to do everything in my power to not feel this same thing again. But that's just your mind playing tricks on you, right? It's just saying that's not really true. Because again, you're taking the blame and the responsibility, which go hand in hand with shame and guilt.
Mhm.
You're taking the blame and responsibility for what somebody else did to you. And so now you're going to fix it, right? I'm going to make sure that this doesn't happen again. I'm going to do everything in my power because I'm going to save this person. I'm going to make sure that they don't do this again. But you can't change anyone. There's nothing you can do that's going to change that person. You can change yourself. You can shed that shame, shed that guilt. Stop taking on the blame and responsibility for someone else's behaviors. Stop excusing people's behaviors. I think I shared in the session that I held at the retreat this past April that I just realized I was in a domestic violence relationship, because my excuse was always, oh, this is just the way he is. He does this all the time, right? And it hit me. I was like, wait a minute. I'm making excuses for someone. Why? Why am I doing that? I'm taking the blame and responsibility for something that I had nothing to do with. But this is 30 something years later. I'm just realizing I'm almost 50. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm just now realizing this. But that's just what happens. We just naturally do that. Oh, that's the way they are. Oh, they'll get better.
Mhm.
Things like that. So it's a process. It's a
Wow.
very interesting process.
Thank you for sharing that. And that gives us hope. And so many times, I know I have found myself, it's one thing to come out of a domestically abusive marriage and you're like, this is never going to happen again. then maybe you date somebody, or you ended up again in another abusive relationship. And that's where shame can really set in, because you're like, how did I get here again? How did I miss this? I have training, or I should understand this. And it's just like, sometimes it's realizing it's going down deep into, no matter how much you know, sometimes it's still easy to miss,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to go down deep into, why am I allowing these
Yeah.
behaviors? Why am I accepting this?
Mm-hmm.
And so many times people want to shame us too, because they're like, you should have known better. Or why do you feel so worthless that you would let somebody do that? And it's just like, that makes it feel worse. And then you're going to clam up more. And you're like, I'm sharing nothing, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
it's just like, it's having mercy on ourselves is really the only way we're going to heal, is
Yeah.
just be gentle to ourselves. Because I feel like shame is one of those things. If you shame yourself, the shame just will hide. It won't come out. You got to show yourself mercy.
Yeah. And my motto to all my clients is grace, because I have a lot of clients who come to therapy and they're like, "Why am I not fixed yet? Why am I not doing this yet?" And I'm like, "You're not broken. What do you mean, why are you not fixed yet?" I'm like, "It took you 10 plus years to get here. I promise you, in 6 months, you are not going to be fixed, as you say."
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, stop beating yourself up because that negative belief still pops up sometimes, or you find yourself still getting anxious or depressed, or some of the symptoms come back. That's okay. We're imperfect. But on this journey to getting to that end, I call it that freedom. Like, you feel free, you feel at peace. You got to give yourself some grace in that journey. Because if you don't, then you're going to stop. Like, oh, this is not working. I can't do this. It can
Mhm.
sometimes take people years to get to a good place. And that's
Yeah.
being honest. It,
Mhm.
it sometimes can take just that long.
Mhm.
Like I just said, my own example. I'm almost 50, and it just hit me like, oh, Lord, that happened. And I didn't realize you carry that with you. You carry it. And even in my own marriage, I've been married almost 26 years, right? Even in my own marriage, sometimes in the beginning, my husband would like talk with his hands and I would like jump. And I'm just like, he's like, "Why are you jumping?" I'm like, I don't know why, because he's not that type of person at all. But I didn't realize I was still carrying that fear and that anxiousness and all the stuff from the relationships I had previously,
Mhm.
where I had a reason to jump. And so I have to give myself time to get to that point where I'm like, okay, I'm here. I feel free. I don't have to jump anymore. I don't have to feel that anxiousness or that depression anymore. But it's not going to happen overnight. It may not happen in 6 months. It may not happen in a year. But if you put in the work and you keep going and you remind yourself all the way through that this is not on you, this is you healing from something that somebody else did. That
Mhm.
is their shame and that's their guilt that they have to carry.
Mhm.
Because guilt is, I did something to you intentionally, Lauren. I said something mean to you, so I should feel guilty about that. So I always tell my clients, what did you do? What did you do to this person that made them do this to you?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Wow. That's yes, that's so good. And I think it does take a long time, and it depends on, and I feel like God is very gracious and gives us stuff as we're ready to. And we
Yeah.
need to be patient with our bodies and patience with ourselves, and realize that God's just not going to reveal some things to you until you're ready to know and
Mhm.
ready to walk through that. Because you gave it to us all at once. It would be really soul
Yeah.
crushing. You may not make it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why that grace is so important for yourself. That's
Mhm.
one of my models I tell, give yourself some grace. Give yourself some grace constantly. When I see them frustrated, give yourself some grace. It's okay. It literally is okay.
I love that. That's awesome. I'm gonna hear that voice. Yeah, okay.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And our next question, I feel like we got to cover, but we'll just see what else there is here. I'm loving this conversation so much. Why does a survivor feel shame and guilt?
Why? Typically because they feel like they could have done something differently.
Mm,
They feel like maybe they could have gotten out sooner, um, said something earlier, done something different. Um, Goes back to that negative belief of I should have known better. And there is some levels of, them feeling hopeless or not feeling good about themselves. So they feel like they can just take whatever they're given, not loving who they are because of their own experiences, even before they met this person or even before they, are in this particular relationship or situation. So it's kind of like that. Did I love the way I looked growing up? Oh, I hated it. Did I feel great about myself? No, not really. So sometimes we just take whatever we get in a relationship, and it's like because this is where we feel about ourselves.
Mhm.
So we carry that with us into relationships, into friendships, and understanding what you deserve and what you actually need from your mate, from your friends, from any part of your life. Because you think about your basic needs, right? We think of water, food, shelter, right? Your basic needs are met. But if we take that a little bit further, safety is one of them. You don't feel safe if you don't trust anyone, right? I can't come to you, Lauren, and tell you things or say things to you if I don't trust you, if I don't feel safe.
Mhm.
So that's important because when you've experienced trauma and you're in these relationship, that's one of the biggest things that's affected is trust.
Yes.
Another thing that's affected is your self-esteem, how you feel about yourself. Safety is another one. Then you've got intimacy, and then you have power and control. Power and control, aka boundaries, right? Making sure that you have boundaries within your future relationships going forward. And typically, many of us don't have those boundaries because of what we've experienced. So we want to please people, or AKA over accommodate or assimilate, just go along with the flow, or over accommodate by doing more than what you even really want to do. So sometimes it's important to say no, nope, I don't want to do it. No, and be okay with it
Mhm.
or build on that trust. Like just because that last person did X, Y, and Z to me does not mean going forward I'm going to experience that. Self esteem, how you feel about yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror, telling yourself what you deserve and what you need, and you're not settling for anything less than that.
Mhm.
And that leads into intimacy, not just from a sexual perspective, just having that connection with someone, being able to be vulnerable and transparent.
Mhm. Wow. Yes. And I feel like that's, yeah, being vulnerable and transparent is a very hard thing when you've experienced trauma, and that takes time and trust. And it's okay that not everybody feels safe to do that with,
Yeah.
and to find those people that you do feel safe with, um,
Yeah.
to be intimate and vulnerable with. I find for me, a lot of times it's other people that have also been through a lot of trauma
Yep.
and have walked into their trauma and dealt with it. Not people have been
Mhm.
through trauma and like, oh, I've not done anything for it. That no,
Right,
that's
right.
not
Yeah,
gonna be very good.
exactly. Exactly.
Yes, I feel like there's an understanding in that relationship when there's two
Mhm.
people that have experienced a lot of trauma. You understand what it's like to. I feel like it changes your worldview. Trauma
Right.
does, and it's just things
Exactly.
that you're not going to view the same as somebody else who's not probably walked through a lot of really deep traumas in their life, and that's okay. And it's learning to accept that aspect of you too. Is those things? Some of those things just aren't going to be different.
Yeah. But they can be. They
Hmm.
can be. You can get to a point where you can trust again, where you
Yeah.
do feel safe again. In my own experience, I do feel safe again. I do trust again. I don't feel I'm not on super alert, but that just comes from years of working through that and talking through that and being open and saying, you know what, I'm navigating this way. I'm behaving this way because of what I experienced. But I don't want those experiences to have control over me. I don't want them to run my life anymore. So how
Yes.
do I work through that? How do I get back to who I would actually be if I did not experience these traumas?
Wow, that's good. That gives me hope. I'm like, I need to delve deeper.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, it's definitely a long process
It
of,
is a long it is a long, yeah. That's why I said it can take some time and that's okay though. It's okay to do that. It's okay to start, stop. It's okay. It really is.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, I walked into therapy 10 years ago, so it took a long time.
Yeah.
I'm still there. So
Yeah, that's okay.
it's all
There's
good.
nothing wrong with that. Hmm.
Nothing goes.
Nothing wrong with that.
How can one begin to confront the shame and guilt that feels so overwhelming at times?
Well, therapy, of course, and that's
Yes.
just because I'm a therapist. But yeah, finding someone that can help you process what you've experienced, that
Mm.
can support you. Now, we can't do it for you, but we can be the catalyst to help you through your processing, right? So therapy is important. And your therapist will tell you having a good support system is good, right? Doing things for yourself, setting some boundaries in relationships in your life is good. Taking some self-care, right? Making sure that you are taking care of yourself and taking care of your needs. So I'm a firm believer, and of course, the Lord, praying. I'm always a component. Jesus in therapy. It's a great
Yes.
combination. It
Yes.
is. And I find sometimes, I'm like, Lord, can you just tell me the answer real quick so I ain't got to toil about this for the next month and stress myself out over the next month? If you could just let me know, write me a note, send me something. Because sometimes we're stuck, right? We don't know which way we're going, what we're doing. And it's like, I just need a sign, an answer, something. So I always think, but yes, I believe in therapy. And of course, as a Christian, I believe in prayer,
Mhm.
praying with others, praying, through a lot of things. But I think it's important that we also have someone that we can go to and talk to for
Yes.
support.
Yes. I'm a huge fan of Jesus and therapy.
Mhm.
Both
Yes,
are very important.
very important.
Yes. So for survivors who are further down the road, how does one deal with shame as it resurfaces?
Mm. Hope using the tools that you've learned, honestly. Well, it depends on. So if you're someone who's gone through therapy and you know because the reality is things are going to pop up, right? Um, that's why it's important not to avoid situations. So think of it as this: things happen to you, right? Your brain and your body, your nervous system, your brain, it remembers these things that's happened to you. If you've taken an approach where you've avoided those situations, then you haven't given your body time to adjust to know that you don't have to fear this situation any longer. But typically, things happen, we let it go, we push it down, and we keep moving forward.
Hmm.
So, as you're working through your shame, don't avoid those uncomfortable feelings. Sit in it for a little while. Make sure you understand that you are safe, that you don't have to run from this. You can literally just process it. And so that way, the next time when something triggers you, it could be a smell, it could be a sound, it could be something someone's, it could be anything. You have now trained yourself to say, you know what? This is not danger anymore for me. I don't have to run from it anymore because I have not avoided it previously. I've actually let it, my body feel it, know it, understand it, so it can decipher whether I need to run or I'm good.
Wow. I
And
like
that's
that.
yeah, and that's a process, and that's kind of the work I do with EMDR and brain spotting. It's like you are literally training yourself to know I'm going to go through everything that's happened in my life, from being hit, from being abused, from being left alone, whatever's happened to you, being homeless, whatever's happened to you. I am going to work through every single thing, how I felt during that time, and I'm going to process all that so that if something comes up again, my body is going to receive it, but it's not going to affect me like it did. It will not be so distressful because I already processed that. So my
Yes.
body's already aware of it. It knows that I'm okay right now.
Wow. That's so good. Oh, this was helpful to me. I'm like, okay, when I it's not running from them, it's willing to face it and
Yep.
sit in it and feel it and
Yes.
speak the truth to yourself,
Right.
grounding techniques. I love the butterfly tapping is something I do, get
Mhm.
outside of nature,
Yep.
and remind myself that I'm safe. I
Yeah.
love that because so many times in trauma, when you experience those triggers, it's the immediate thought is run, flee, freeze,
Mhm.
fawn, all these things. But it's like, no, stop. Let's experience this, but
Exactly.
this time we're going to rewire the neurons and our body's going to learn we are safe now.
That's
I
right.
love that. That's awesome.
That's right. That's right.
I'm ready for a trigger now. Come on. I'm going to face this. It's going to be great.
Exactly.
No,
Yeah.
it
Go to
happened.
void. Go to void. Let your body feel that. Sit in that for a minute, and then okay, now it knows. So if it happens again, I'm ready for it.
Yes.
Hmm.
Wow. Well, this has been such a good conversation today.
Yeah, I enjoyed it myself.
Good. I feel like I've been empowered with tools to be able to walk through trauma. I'm like, oh, I
Good.
love this. This is great. I love new tools in my tool belt and to be able to share them with others too. So thank you so much. And
Of course, anytime. It's always a pleasure to speak with you, Lauren.
yes, and then a reminder for those who are just tuning in is that Renee will be a speaker at our 2024 Women's Retreat.
Yes, I will.
And we have not released a sign up for that yet, but it's coming out very soon. So I hope you enjoyed today's conversation because she'll be speaking much more in depth on this at the 2024 retreat.
I will. I will. I'm excited. I'm excited. Thank you again for having me this morning.
Yes, thank you for coming. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I look
Okay.
forward to talking again soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.